Hi again. In this episode, we are going to talk about how to create or earn predictable rates of return on your money. Now, this is one of my favorite subjects, and I've been teaching this to students for 45 years. You're going to be blown away. I'm going to use a little exercise here at the beginning, but then I'm going to show you what I mean by predictable rates of return. And these are not pie-in-the-sky rates of return, trying to get rich quick. These are the slow, methodical methods where your money doubles every 5, 7, 10 years. And if you started out with $125,000, it's just 30 years, it doubles to $250, to $500, to $1 million, to $2 million, to $4 million, to $8 million. And I've helped people do that all the time. So I'm Doug Andrew, and I've helped people earn predictable rates of return for 45 years by using a very powerful strategy that I will explain to you. But I want to give you a little exercise to start out with. Okay, you ready? I want you to see how good you are with simple math. I want you to pick a number, any number between 1 and 10. If you got that number between 1 and 10, make sure it's a whole number. Now, take that number between 1 and 10 and let's double it. Now, let's add 8 to that number. So now you have another new number in your head. Now let's take that last number you arrived at and divide that in half. So divide by 2, take half of that number. Now let's subtract the original number you started out with from that last number. You should have a final number in your head. Now if I was going too quick, you picked a number between 1 and 10. You then doubled it, added 8 to that number, divided that number in half, and then subtracted the original number you started out with from that last number. So you arrived at a final number. I want you to take that final number that you arrived at and pick the corresponding letter of the alphabet that number represents. So if your last number ended up being 1, that would be the letter A. 2 would be B. 3 would be C. If your last number was 4, that would be the letter D. 5 would be E. Okay. Take the letter you arrived at and pick a country whose name starts with that letter. Let's go to Europe or the Baltics, okay? There will be a country that starts towards the beginning of the alphabet. A might be Austria, but if your letter, whatever that letter was that you picked, pick a country. So A might be Austria, B might be Belgium, C might be Czech Republic, D, Denmark, E, England or Estonia, F, France, G, Germany, H, Hungary, I, Ireland or Italy. Have you got your country that starts with your letter? Take the last letter in the name of that country and pick a zoo animal that starts with that letter. An animal that's not indigenous to the United States, but you'd probably find in a zoo here. So you've got a country in Europe or the Baltics that starts with that. You took the last letter of that country and picked a zoo animal. Take the last letter in the name of that zoo animal and pick a common fruit that starts with that letter. Okay, you got your country, your zoo animal, and your fruit. I know what 85% of people came up with when they do this exercise. Denmark, kangaroo, orange. Is that what you came up with? Now, sometimes people came up with Denmark koala apple. You're unique. Now, if you did not get 4 for your final number, you need to brush up on your math. But I just created predictability. So I love helping people create predictability in their life, and I just talk about Denmark kangaroo orange. So I'm going to show you how predictably, like Denmark kangaroo orange, 85-90% of the time, I'm able to earn predictable rates of return and not lose when the market crashes, and average 7, 8, 9, 10% rates of return tax-free through good and bad times, and I can sleep at night because my money will always earn that predictable rate of return. So the way that I create predictable rates of return in the 7 to 10% range during the highs and the lows of the economy is by using a strategy called indexing. And I have other episodes where I talk in detail about how indexing works. But let me just fast forward to what a statement looks like. This is one of my son's clients. They have on one sheet of paper their various options for protecting their money when the market goes down. What I want to do is zero in on these right here. In that particular year, 20% of this person's money was not in the market. In fact, 100% of the money wasn't in the market, but 20% of their money was linked to the Barclays U.S. Dynamic Balance Index. That's called the BUDBI, B-U-D-B-I. So you can see here that on the side, in that given year, 20% of their money linked to the Barclays, the BUDBI, they earned 13.65 on that one. Another 20% of their money was over in this one, and they earned 11%. They capped out on that one. That was what? The S&P 500 over here. Now, if we go down to this one, this is called the blended index performance. And over there, they had 20% of the money there. They earned 15% on 20% of their money. See, they were diversified. This diversifies your money better than any way of trying to put it out in a bunch of mutual funds, because when the market loses, it loses all across the board many times. You have on this bottom right here, they had a portion of their money just earning the general account portfolio rate, and that was 4.4%. The key here is that all of this averaged that year for this client a rate of return greater than 10% for that particular, and this is very common, but all of their money, and it was several $100,000 at the beginning here, was a very predictable, safe rate of return. They didn't lose, and they made as low as 4.5%, but they made up to 15%, and then they just averaged about 10%. This is how I've done it myself. In other episodes, we talk about the types of max-funded insurance contracts where people are taking out a life insurance contract for the purpose of tax-free accumulation and tax-free income, more than just for the death benefit. And when we talk about universal life, which I like because it's more flexible than whole life, there's fixed, there's indexed, and there's variable. Fixed just means you're telling the insurance company, don't link my return to the market. And this is where E.F. Hutton came out with this idea clear back in 1980. So I have several of those. Usually the guarantee is around 3%. The lowest I've earned here is about 4%. Since the year 2000, I have earned 6.3%. The highest was 13.75%, but it probably averages over 25 years about 7.5%. Well, when they introduced variable in the 1990s, there is no guarantee. People have lost as much as 50%. The average since 2000, when we calculated this, was 1.81. How pathetic. You can earn as high as 35, but the average might be 9.14 if you hang in there and don't get emotional about selling. That's a variable. I've never owned a variable. I never will. See, I don't like to have losses. So when indexing came out in 1997, I chose it for predictability because it has zero floor. I don't lose. I may not make anything, but I now, instead of having to earn as high as 13.75, I've earned as high as 39%. But watch, 10.07, Denmark Kangaroo Orange. I have earned for 25 years 10.07, which is about 2.5% higher than the fixed. So that's why I choose this one, because I can end up saying, oh, just pay me the fixed rate anytime I feel like, I think we're headed for a recession. And this is how I create predictable rates of return. How predictable? Well, here's 5 that I have owned here. This is the 30-year average. 8.11, 7.73, 7.42, 8.85, 8.3. My heavens. Is that pretty predictable? It doesn't vary much at all. And that's just letting the money sit there and falling asleep for 30 years and never changing the strategy. By changing the strategy, it's called rebalancing. I take all of these numbers up usually another 2 percentage points. So that's where I've been averaging about 10% for more than 25 years. Denmark Kangaroo Orange. So if that was like drinking water out of a fire hose, I understand. But folks, it would behoove you to learn more about how indexing can help you. It's really not that complicated, and that's why I've written 11 books, and most of them addressed indexing in one fashion or another in depth. And so I would encourage that you click on this video here and also search many others in this series, because when you learn this, you will dramatically increase your rate of return over time. But don't worry about getting rich quick. Rates of return in the 7 to 10% range, tax-free. I mean, that's incredible. That will double your money every 7 to 10 years.